Hello, thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. My name is Al Segala. I'll be a moderator for the session. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. As you know, we always have interesting guests, and this is no exception. Our guest this time is Eric Eisenhammer. Eric is kind of famous for being a taxpayer advocate, and he's also helping the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. So we'll be giving you some websites as we go along, and we'll be covering some interesting things. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Al. Glad to be here.
How'd you get involved in this taxpayer stuff?
You know what? By accident, really. I had never intended to work in the political field at all. I'm from Thousand Oaks, I'm from down south, and I was kind of imagined I'd work in a bank. Not because I really wanted to work in a bank, but I just didn't really know of anything else to do, and it seemed like a grown-up kind of job. And I wound up getting connected to Tom McClintock, who I think might actually be our congressman up here, because he was originally from down there, where I'm from.
Yeah, he is.
And so I got connected to McClintock, and he is, he's an inspirational man. He's a man of integrity and character. So I think had I met a lot of more typical politicians in my volunteering experience in college, I probably would have ran the other way. But I loved Tom, and then the bank wouldn't hire me. So then I wound up, getting a job in the Capitol, because they hired me when the bank went. And then I worked in the Capitol for a year, had an interesting experience there. I actually found, I learned a lot. I'm glad I did it. But I also found the atmosphere overall to be pretty self-important, and I saw a lot of silliness going on there. Wound up working for Howard Jarvis next, and then I got involved in campaigns, taxpayer-related campaigns, which is what I still do.
Well, Eric, looks like we got some interesting things to talk about. You have a project with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association called Follow the Money Report. What is Follow the Money Report?
Well, the reason why I started doing that is back when I started at Howard Jarvis, I started as an office assistant. I answered their phone. And one day, this guy called us up, and he was like, you guys, you always say that we spend so much money and we don't need more taxes, but, you don't give any examples. You claim that we're wasting so much money, but you don't have any specific examples. That's something you say, you crazy right-wing people.
No facts.
Right, yeah, you don't back it up. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, there's one example after another out there. So why don't we just put it together in like some kind of report so that people who are pro-taxpayer can have that report and share it with their friends and kind of document that what we're saying is actually true. So that was where that came from. Mind you, my family background, I'm not even from a super conservative family. My mom was a Democrat. And I was actually a lot more liberal fiscally when I was younger. But it was looking at those examples myself when I saw them, and I was just like, oh my goodness, you just blew $300 million here and $1 billion there. That I realized, yeah, I might want this or that government service, but the money to pay for it is already there. They're just mismanaging the tremendous amount of money that we're already giving them.
Well, how much waste was revealed this year?
Yeah, literally $50 billion in all. If you were to add up all of the examples, that's what they would amount to.
Now, is that in California?
California,
or the
yeah.
world?
No, it's California. Yeah, just California.
50 billion
which is phenomenal.
That's a lot of money,
right? Well, it's that a few $100 million here and $1 billion here, and a million, a few 100,000, and 10 billion, and this and that, and you just add it up.
Well, if this waste were eliminated, then we spend $50 billion less. Is that right?
Well, it's not necessarily annually. So some of these are, some waste was discovered over maybe a 5-year period or a 10-year period.
Oh, okay.
So that goes into that number. It's not necessarily 50 billion annually, although there is a statistic that I would agree with, that the average person believes that about half the money our government spends is wasted.
Okay.
And with that report, those are only examples that we know about. Those are examples that were revealed by the state auditor, that were revealed by media investigations, things like that, things that are publicly available. So, you look at that and you go, okay, well, we know for sure, for a fact, because the auditor said, or, this media investigation uncovered it, that this money was wasted. But usually, same with crime, Usually when somebody's arrested for committing a crime, usually it's not the first time they actually committed that crime. It's just the first time they got caught. Yeah. So, in my opinion, I think that's probably just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow. Okay, now, if somebody wanted to read this report, would they go to the website, Howard Jarvis website?
That's right, yeah.
Which is?
hjta.org, and they can find it under Studies and Reports. There's a tab.
Okay, hjta.org. Okay, did you have your pencil? We'll give it to you again. Go get your pencil. All right, now, you're also involved in the Tax Fairness Act. What does the Tax Fairness Act do?
Well, the Tax Fairness Act is a measure supported by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association that it shores up the two-thirds protection, because the two-thirds vote protection is something that we implemented with Prop 218. That was a Howard Jarvis-backed measure that imposed two-thirds requirements on local governments to pass taxes. A lot of times back in the day when they passed that was about 20 years ago now, that was passed because local governments were finding sneaky ways to go around Prop 13.
Right.
And then a little later on, there was something called Prop 26. That was within the last 5 to 10 years. Prop 26 said that regulations are also taxes. So if you call it like a fee, you can't just call it something else and then it's not a tax anymore. It's still a tax.
Like the fire fee.
Yeah, exactly, So, and that was actually something that Howard Jarvis sued about and tried to say that was passed improperly. So these protections were put into place, and unfortunately, there have been legal rulings where judges have ruled that they don't apply. So that's why now we're going to correct that and say that 2/3 of local voters need to vote in favor of any new tax. Also that taxes that are proposed need to be fully defined as to what the government is going to do with that money.
Right. And
then also that taxes that are regulations or taxes that are fees or they're called whatever fancy word, that those are taxes too, and they also need to be voted by a 2/3 majority, just like any other kind of tax. Okay, well, all you're doing is spreading sunshine. Exactly. Yeah. And also, think about this. If a tax is really good, 2/3 of people might vote for it. Right. And that actually happens all the time. A lot of times I vote no, but, I don't like the tax, but 2/3 of people very often will agree to a tax. Yeah. So it's not something that necessarily says, we can't have taxes, but it is something that says if we're going to have a tax, they got to be clear as to what they're going to use the money for, transparency, and also that we need to agree by 2/3 because it takes money out of people's pockets, whether or not we want to do that. Now, that will have an effect on that $50 billion of squandering. See, yeah, I agree. I think that the more that the politicians just have a blank check to spend however much money they want, the easier it is for them to squander it. Okay, so this is called the Tax Fairness Act. Yeah, is that correct? It is, yeah. Tax Fairness Act. And it's the website is taxpayerprotectionact.com. So that's 4 words. All right, say them slowly. Yes. Now you got your pencil. All right. Yes, Taxpayer protectionact.com.
Okay. And the first word is yes?
That's correct.
All right.
There's four words.
All right.
When you type it in, if there's not 4 words, you did it wrong.
Now, this is actually a constitutional amendment, is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
And that'll be on the ballot?
It will be. It'll be on the ballot in November.
All right.
And we want people to get involved. So besides going to that website, we want people to endorse it. We want people to sign up to support it.
Yeah.
We really need to show that we as taxpayers want to support protections for ourselves.
Well, the people need to know if it's really justified or not.
Right.
And they won't know that without getting information about why we need it.
I mean, transparency. How could anybody not be for transparency? How could anybody not think that just think about it. If you were to ask your friend for money, that you need money and want to borrow money, be honest as to why. Like if a friend told me they needed money because, they didn't have enough money to pay their rent, and then they took the money and went to the casino instead, I'd probably be kind of ticked off,
Yeah.
So how are the politicians any different? Just be honest. Tell us what you're going to do with it. If you're going to use it for the children, and you really are going to use it for the children, then maybe we'll approve it. If you want to give yourselves raises, we probably won't, and you need to be upfront about that.
That seems to be a real serious problem where people vote for something that's really needed, and then the money goes to the general fund, and then it's spent on something that they may not really approve of.
Yeah, I think that happens all the time. John Kupal has spoken out about that related to the gas tax.
Yeah, and it's almost fraud.
I agree. I think that the politicians know that we will vote to support certain things, and there's other things that we don't like as much. So they like to say that they're going to use the money for something we like.
Right. Like fixing roads.
Yeah, like roads, exactly. We all like roads, we all like children,
Yeah.
We all like the environment,
Well, our group has been getting signatures to repeal the gas tax.
Good.
And we've been working on that. Do you have an update on how that's going?
Yeah. They've collected over 800,000 signatures total.
You need 600. You need 600 to qualify.
Even less, 500 something.
Oh, okay.
But they've collected over 800,000. Howard Jarvis is the main part of that coalition, and they're hoping to have even 900,000 by the time they count all the straggler petitions coming in. There's still more they haven't counted yet, so hopefully that will give us a big enough margin that we'll actually make it. The other thing that, and I'm sort of speaking on behalf of my own experience personally from trying to get different propositions on the ballot. Usually when petition signatures are collected by volunteers,
right,
and they're collected from people who are, sincerely people who want it, as opposed to the paid efforts that sometimes, you can have more issues with validity. Usually with volunteer petition drives, usually you have a pretty high validity rate.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that that's the case here. And and that we make it.
Yeah, well, that'd be wonderful. So we got some sunshine on the horizon.
I hope so. I hope we'll have the Tax Fairness Act. We can give ourselves some more protections. We can get rid of the gas tax. I hope that'll be on the ballot in November. Yeah, a few good things in our state. There's so much bad about our state, but a few good things we could do.
Some of the now, there's several groups that are working, I think, with the same petition. Now, since it is the same petition, can they be put together to amount for the total, or do they have to be only from one group?
Good question. Are you asking about the gas tax?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think that all of the groups, there's a few coalitions working kind of in tandem. And you've got some of the Republican members of Congress.
Right.
You've got Howard Jarvis. You've got Carl DeMaio.
Yeah.
You've got John Cox, who's running for governor. And they're all they're all working together, but they're all working somewhat separately as well. But yes, the petitions are all the same.
Yeah.
Some of them might, from what I've seen, some of them have different, they go back to different petition centers and things like that. But yes, they all go into one pool at the end of the day.
All right, so it's a better chance of getting qualified.
Yeah.
Now, there's another thing going on. This is the Affordable Housing Act. Sounds so good. Everybody wants to have affordable housing.
Right, I know. And that is, it's what a time to talk about it, because housing prices have gone up so much, and that's one of the big reasons a lot of people are leaving the state, not enough affordable housing. So what the Affordable Housing Act, what that is it's a statewide rent control measure.
Right.
And what they're going to try to do is they're going to empower local governments to create boards of political appointees
right.
that would be able to set rent. The idea is that ostensibly that's going to create more affordable housing. But when you think about that, that doesn't actually address any of the issues that have caused a lack of affordable housing.
Right.
It doesn't increase the housing supply at all.
Right.
It doesn't do anything regarding, plans that, local governments set that prohibit construction of housing, or
right.
regulations that stop housing from being constructed. It just makes a law that you get all of these boards that'll be able to just tell people what rent is allowed to be, but it doesn't address the real problems.
I wonder if you could tax the anti-growth people, where they would pay a little percentage of the increased costs of rent. And because they're basically causing the problem, shouldn't they contribute to a solution?
Well, it's we have a supply issue. We definitely have a supply issue. We just don't have enough housing. We have 40 million people, and the housing that we need hasn't been built, and there's a lot of reasons, of government reasons, why that hasn't been built. The solution, or the solution being presented to us in this initiative, it doesn't address things like that, though. What it does do is it creates these boards. So the boards, there could be hundreds of them created around the state. Besides setting rent, I'm just telling people what rent would be, they also are going to be potentially having the ability to impose fees of their own. They also could be sued. I mean, they're going to create this patchwork of regulations around the state. So inevitably, they're going to get sued. And they actually wrote into the initiative, and I find this crazy, but they actually wrote it into the initiative that if they get sued, we, the taxpayers, have to pay their legal costs, even if they lose.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
That would happen, because once you create a government entity, then anything they create in the way of costs or have to pay for damages goes back to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
You don't have to have that in the law.
Well, and they did. They actually put it in the law that we the taxpayers have to pay their legal costs. And one other thing, they're putting this in as a constitutional amendment to our state constitution, and we can't fix it. If we find out, even for people that are potentially supportive of the basic premise of what they're trying to do.
Right.
And then we find out, what about these unelected boards? What about all of these hundreds of political appointees running around, or thousands of political appointees running around? What about if we find out that it's causing more problems than we first realized? Right. It's got all these unintended consequences. Well, we can't fix it. It's already, if it passes, it's there. And the only way to fix it would be to go all the way back to the ballot, all over again. It'd be a long process. It'd be an expensive process. It'd be very difficult. So we could be stuck with this thing. And, check out this unintended consequence, for example. And, you could really go to town when you think about it. But this one, just one thing, for example, Airbnbs. So what are people going to do? You're going to have this proposition. It's going to apply to somebody like me. If I were to, let's just say I moved out of state for a little while and I wanted to rent out my house, it's going to apply all over the board. So it's going to apply to people who are renting out like a single unit just as much as it's going to apply to like apartment building owners. So if I was affected by a rent law that tells me, I'm only allowed to charge this or that amount to rent out my property, it might be intelligent if I were to say, well, I could make more money converting my house to an Airbnb. Maybe I could make $100 a day doing that, but then, I'm only allowed to charge, let's just say, $1,000 a month for rent under whatever is created by whatever board of political appointees are telling me what it can be. It wouldn't be unintelligent at all to say, like, well, okay, I'd make a lot more if I do an Airbnb and then go that route. And if that's the result, there's places where there's tons of Airbnbs, like San Diego.
What are Airbnbs?
It's so an Airbnb is it's a website. Google it, Airbnb, and there's a few others like it. What they do is they give people the opportunity to rent out their home just on their own to sort of. Some people don't like it because they say that their condo complexes, for example, are starting to turn into like almost virtual hotels because people are using this so much. But it's now a way for people when you travel to, rather than needing to spend, let's say, $200 at a hotel in some city, you might be able to get a pretty nice place for cheaper that has a kitchen and has the amenities of a home. Yeah. So it's become really popular, but it's also become a way for people in places, especially places popular with tourists, to sometimes it was originally, I think, meant for like you're maybe out of town for a couple of weeks and then, you can still make some money off your home when you're not in it. But it's become a thing where, like, people will just use an extra apartment as an Airbnb for income, which is something that is an entirely different issue that people are trying to regulate that because some people don't like that.
Well, that's like short-term rentals.
Yeah, exactly. My point, though, with that is that were we to see more apartments or more condos and things like that converted to Airbnbs rather than being on the rental housing market, then you're actually going in the other direction. You're actually making the problem worse, because if we have more apartments, more homes being essentially turned into hotel rooms, then that actually means that there's even less housing available then. So the people who wanted to increase the amount of affordable housing would actually be making the basic problem worse by creating a incentive to turn your home into an Airbnb rather than renting it out.
Now, would this also apply to leases, like a 1-year lease, 2-year leases?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is about when you rent out apartments in an apartment building, when if you were to rent out your house, if you're going to rent out a condo or whatever, whether you have like one unit that's being rented or you're renting a whole building, this applies. So it really would, in effect, create a lot of problems for taxpayers and for renters too, because there's going to be less housing available.
So the solution on affordable housing seems to be to allow the market to provide more housing. Is that right?
I would agree.
So when the new housing comes available, it's competing with the existing housing, and that competition causes the rents to go down because people don't want to have a high vacancy factor. Is that correct?
Yeah. One of the biggest problems, we just don't have enough housing in our state, and the more that we can create conditions that spur more housing to be constructed, that's gonna ultimately that's going to decrease the price as more will be available. That's a, basic economic law. And this does a lot of things, none of which is that. It's just more laws, more taxes, more unintended consequences. Really, it's a big mess that we're not going to be able to clean up easily.
Now, the Affordable Housing Act, is that qualified for the ballot for November?
They submitted a whole bunch of signatures. They had a big press conference, literally just within the last few days. They were waving signs, "The rent is too damn high," which I saw a lot of people were posting on Facebook. Like, really? Is that really their slogan for their campaign? But yes, they've submitted a whole bunch of signatures. They're expected to be on the ballot in November. People can get involved in the campaign against this misguided idea by going to protectcarenters.com.
Protectcarenters.com.
That's
and you still have your pencil? All right. Protectcarenters.com. You're going to be so well informed after watching this program. Everybody's going to admire you.
That's right. They're going to be jealous.
So now there's when you think about housing, I guess the very lowest form of housing would be a cardboard box with some Visqueen and a sleeping bag.
Right.
And that's your street people.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go a level up, you actually get a tent. And you got to find a place to put tent, and usually it's not a very good place because you don't have sanitation and other things. And then the next level would be an RV. Okay, and the RV could be at somebody's property or it could be an RV park. Okay, so next level up, and now each level is going to cost a little more, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so from the RV, we go to what's called a mobile home or manufactured home. And then that could be on...
Some of those are pretty nice.
Yeah, they,
yeah, they
are.
Those can get pretty fancy.
Okay, so that's the next level up in affordable housing. And then we go to the low area of homes that are stick-built or built in place, and it's usually in tracts. And then, so within a development, you'll find the smaller ones, which are more affordable, and then the larger ones, which would be more expensive. So this is the whole market. It's from cardboard box up to a fine home. And so the effect of this law on that pattern is going to create what? More cardboard boxes?
At the end of the day, yeah, because when you have less housing, what does that do? When if for example, more of the housing, people don't want to build as much housing, and if people turn the housing, or at least some of the housing that exists, into Airbnbs, short-term hotel kind of rentals.
Now the website on this is?
ProtectCARenters.com.
ProtectCARenters.com, and we're out of time. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Great to see you, Al.
All right, Eric. See you next time.